Hi, everyone, and welcome. So, I want to talk about a subject today that there are no shortage of conversations about, and that is AI and creativity. AI versus creativity, maybe you could call it. But let me start by sharing a few little anecdotes, if I may. So, I went to a craft show earlier today and I got this wonderful thing. What is it, you ask? Well, if I flip it upside down, it's going to crinkle in my mic. It is a plastic bag holder and dispenser, which I sorely have needed because I have been keeping my plastic bags, my plentiful collection of plastic bags, in a larger plastic bag in my office closet. And the thing is just all over the place. It's unwieldy. It's taking up a bunch of space that it doesn't need to be taking up. So I saw those. They were a fundraiser for High Country Humane, which is it's a rescue organization for dogs and cats in Flagstaff, Arizona, and they were having a fundraiser. And they're having all sorts of exciting things happen. They're going to combine with the Coconino Humane Association, which is basically our version of the Humane Society. And so it's really neat. They're expanding operations. I think it's going to be great for the animals. And that's wonderful. And I was also, part of my anecdote still, I was also able to donate to them and to another animal rescue organization that was there at the craft show copies of To the Dogs, the Altitude Press anthology that is all dog themed. I am looking at this video and wondering, I think I might have not put on the flipped the camera so that the text shows up correctly, but you can kind of tell how it looks anyway. So To the Dogs, 31 very short stories about man's best friend. This was a wonderful, wonderful anthology to edit. I worked with all these authors from around the world, and it was really neat to be able to donate multiple copies of that to these humane organizations. And speaking of anthologies, I want to announce, I've already announced it elsewhere, so I'm a little late on this, but the paperback version of Whatever, a Gen X flash fiction anthology, is now live. Super excited. If you just look up McInnes Whatever or Whatever, a Gen X flash fiction anthology, you should be able to find it. I will try to remember to put it down in the description of this video as well. So that's super exciting. The ebook has been out for a while, but just getting the paperback done and out there has been wonderful. And this is getting a good reception as well. Wonderful authors. Another great project with my little press, Altitude Press, that it was really, really fun to work on. So what do these stories about my paper bag dispenser and my two anthologies have to do with creativity and AI? I hear a lot in my work with writers and just in daily life, just in daily conversations about AI and creativity, and among creatives, artists, whether it's visual artists or I was listening to a podcast this morning, and it was about, and I'm not a fiber artist, but it was about AI and how it's been intruding on the crochet. I don't want to say industry, but art form. So people who crochet, sort of like knitting, for those who might not know what crocheting is, needle arts with yarn. People who crochet are apparently being inundated with AI patterns for crochet projects. And so, again, I just stumbled upon this. I'm not a crochet person. I've done a little bit over the years, but it's really not my thing. I love crochet. I just don't. It's like the dexterity and the patience it requires. I don't do it. But it was all about how AI has really made an incursion into this world of the art of crochet, and how these patterns are just awful. And not only, I mean, they're getting better, because that's kind of what tends to happen with AI. As more information comes in and more patterns are sort of extracted from the crochet communities, they're spat back out. And so they are getting a little better in quality, but they at first were starting off, they were really off. They're mass produced. And now what's apparently happening, according to this podcaster, is that the like actual human crochet artists who put their patterns out there to sell or to share, maybe on Etsy or other platforms like that. Those patterns are now being stolen, they're being taken, and again, sort of spat back out by AI as a sort of facsimile, like a not totally accurate, but very sort of cleaned up and sterilized product. So they're basically taking patterns that humans have created, doing a little, what would we say, like just perfecting them, making them more technically perfect, perhaps, which of course strips the final result of the thing that makes it a human-made product. Okay, it's like AI art versus a human-created oil painting. It's just not the same thing. So all of these things have sort of converged, and I didn't really plan for them to. And then they were finally the craft show, this podcast about crochet. And then after the craft fair, I had a conversation about a family member who was working in tech, helping to develop the first examples of AI, the first AI, I don't want to say platforms, but the first AI, basically. And he was saying that, you know, he kind of gets the whole thing about people wondering if AI is going to take all their jobs or start creating all the art or whatever it is. And he tends to have a little more of a jaded view of it, in the sense that he doesn't think AI is so much the next greatest thing, that it's really going to do all these, you know, world takeover, world domination things. Just because of what he knows about what it can do, what it can't do, how it's created. And he had some interesting points of all the money that's going into AI right now from these investors. And I won't get into that. That's a different conversation. And I really don't have the knowledge to expound on that in any way that's going to really add too much to that conversation. But what I can talk about with some experience is this I always want to use terms like, you know, invasion. That's maybe a little too aggressive, but this movement of artificial intelligence specifically into the writing realm. It is no secret that it is here. It's been here for quite a while, and it's probably not going anywhere anytime soon. You only have to start looking for the latest releases, which are coming fast and furious on platforms like KDP, Amazon's platform, to see that AI created works of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, all different literary forms are flooding the market and have been flooding the market for some time. And it has really changed the face of publishing. There are stories coming out. One is very notable right now as I'm recording this, about a novel that was acquired by a publisher, published, and then it came out that it was basically an AI novel. And this author supposedly received nice amount of money for this, and readers were basically deceived. And so then the novel was pulled, and something I saw recently is that copies of that novel that actually hit the shelves are now going for pretty decent prices, because it's now sort of like a cultural, especially in the culture of publishing, it's sort of a cultural moment in time. So people are snapping up. I'm not going to say the name of the author or the book, but if you are connected to publishing, to the world of novels, literature, you probably know the book I'm talking about. So there's this whole issue, I think, of deception that is, again, almost like a separate issue, because I think if someone is using AI to write a story and they're proudly waving the AI flag and they're proclaiming that this was made with AI and isn't that great, I don't really have a problem with that, because, okay, you do you. And as a writing teacher at multiple levels of higher education, let's say. So I work in the composition realm, and then I work with master's students at the MFA level. and I have done this for years and years, I can tell you that AI writing is just not good. Okay, it's just not good. It's not engaging. It's not what I would call sparky, and that it doesn't have that sort of that human spark, that human connectivity factor, where you read a story that's written by a human. It's so strange to have to sort of qualify that, but I'll qualify that because of this topic. You read a human written story, and it either you connect with it or you don't. That comes down to taste. We all have our different tastes in books. But if you think of the last story or novel that you read, or poem that you read, yes, Junebug, I hear you. I see you out there. Of course, she wants to come in right in the middle of my video. If you think of the last thing you read that really resonated with you, that really worked for you, you felt connected to it, and you thought, if you're a writer, maybe you thought what I have often thought in those instances, which is, I wish I had written this. But of course you don't want to just imitate another author's style, but sometimes something is phrased so beautifully, a story is so well told that you think, it's a brilliant concept. It's so well executed. It's wonderful. Why couldn't I have done that? And that kind of gets to the heart of what I'm talking about with AI and literature is, again, it's easy for people to think, well, why even bother being a writer? If you're a writer, it's easy to think, what's the point? AI is flooding the marketplace. It's flooding a bunch of different marketplaces, not just the literary one. I love to write. I hope to connect with readers, but if robots are basically going to be doing this now, what's the point? And I say the point is, again, if you read AI writing with any sort of critical eye, if you're someone who loves to read and you just pull up on, just search for an AI story, an AI poem, create one yourself by putting a prompt in. If you really are able to read that with a critical eye, you will see there's nothing brilliant, nothing sparky, nothing that invites warmth or a chill. Let's say it's a horror story, or genuine connectivity. There might be some moments where it's like, that's an interesting twist, or that's an interesting concept. But in my experience, and I've read quite a bit now of AI generated content, in my experience, there's always something sort of cold and robotic. I'm sure there are better ways to describe it, and I'm sure other people have described it better than I'm doing at this moment, but it almost gets to that uncanny valley situation where people were talking about that when AI videos or AI, like robot technology, was really starting to evolve. And some of these faces and expressions that these robots could make and can make, I mean, this continues to evolve. I think that uncanny valley is still there. They're almost but not quite human. And so there's this eerie sense of, it's so close to human, but it's not. It's just not. And there's that same kind of uncanny valley experience that I have, that I know many readers have. Again, especially readers who really love to read. If you're not much of a reader and it just doesn't really do it for you, and you read an AI story, you might think, that's about as good as the human one I read in 7th grade or whatever. But if you really are a reader, if you are a writer, if you have a keen sense of the written word, I think you can't help but come away with this uncanny valley experience where it's like, I'm almost connecting, maybe if it's particular, I don't know if we can say well done, but if it's a decent AI story that has maybe gone through revisions, or maybe a human has revised it or has kept prompting, adding to the prompts, for example. It is this sort of eerie, not quite there, disconnected feeling. And in my experience, not in an effective way. So some stories, the point of the story is to leave you with sort of an eerie, disconnected feeling, right? Just like ooh, that was spooky, or that was a little creepy. This is not what I'm talking about. This is more of something's just not right. It's technically maybe a story. There's maybe a narrative arc there with a beginning, a middle, and an end, but something just doesn't add up. Now, is AI going to just keep evolving and become more and more human-like from here? I don't know. There are definitely theories out there about that. People have different opinions on that. From what I'm seeing, though, at this point, this is spring of 2026, what I'm seeing is that there was this really steep increase in, I don't want to say the quality, but the realism of AI, where it seemed like not that long ago we were watching AI videos, little clips, and just laughing because they were so absurd. People had 9 fingers on one hand and 4 legs and making these weird spooky movements, and it was just laughable, like this is never going to do anything. But now you look at AI images and videos and they're pretty, sometimes it's hard to tell that it's AI. So I do feel like there was this really sharp increase in the realness of AI. It really, especially images. And in a sense, the same with literature, but I think that's been a little more gradual. But where we go from here, I don't know. I'm not seeing these big changes anymore. I'm not seeing all of a sudden like, wow, this AI story was really good. I wouldn't have believed it was written. It was an AI creation. I was listening to another podcast not too long ago where a famous author was given a prompt to write a story, and the same prompt was given to AI. And then the stories were read. And you could tell at first, maybe it was, you say the AI story was, I think, read aloud first to the listener. And you could kind of tell, but then you'd listen for a while, you'd listen, a minute in, 2 minutes in. And as time went on, it started to become more and more clear that this was, if it was written by this author, then yikes, the skills are degrading there because it really wasn't very good. And so then, without being told which was which, the author's story was read aloud. And almost immediately, again, it's sort of this hard to capture. It's sort of this elusive quality that was just there. You could just hear it. And so that's what I'm talking about in all these sort of roundabout ways is, why be a writer in the age of AI? Because human writers have the human spark. Even if you're still learning, you're still trying to figure out your skills and your voice isn't quite there, you're struggling with dialogue or you're struggling with character motivation, whatever it might be, I am here to tell you that if you are a human being in 2026 trying to write a good story that readers will enjoy, your odds of it being connectable on some level are very high, just by the fact that you're a human being. Now, one obvious risk of that is that can kind of lower the bar. Like, well, this story is human written. It still might not be a great story. It still might need a lot of work, or the concept might be not great. The premise might be a little not very compelling, let's say. So just the fact that something is human written does not automatically make it a great work of art, a great work of literature, obviously, right? However, the fact that something is AI written, in my opinion, absolutely makes it not a great work of art. Could that change? As I said, maybe, who knows where we go from here. But at this point, I've read enough to say I have yet to read something that was created by AI that I would say, wow, this is actually really amazing. That just really, that got me right here. That really moved me. It's just not happening. So I'd be really interested to hear if you've read something that was written by AI that you could honestly say really connected with you. Maybe if you're a writer, if you read something written by AI where you came away from it thinking, wow, I wish I could have written that. That really sort of touched me on a human level, and that's amazing, and I wish I could do that. And now I'm just going to give up being a writer because why bother? AI is genius, and it's artistic, and it's skilled, and it's warm, and it's connecty. I feel like I'm making up all of these strange words. But I'd be really interested to hear about that because I'm not I'm not feeling it. And that right there, my writing friends, is why I contend that you should absolutely continue to be a writer despite the fact that we are in this age of AI. I don't see that chasm, that gap between AI writing and skilled human writing really closing in any dramatic way. Could I be wrong? Sure, but right now I'm just not seeing it. So tell me what you think, and I will see you soon.